Clumzie Twins by Nanny Linda. Colton and Connor were the best of pals, born just 5 minutes apart. They were similar in every way as they grew up, an identical work of art. Lovely boys, so thoughtful and kind, a credit to their mum and dad. But slightly awkward and ungainly, so a more fitting surname couldn't be had. Mr. and Mrs. Clumzie had waited and prayed for a family for many a long year, so to receive 2 babies on the very same day was a miracle they held very dear. The Clumzie twins always had scrapes on their knees and bruises on elbows and toes, and at times were the most blundering boys, always ripping and damaging their clothes. It was costing their parents a fortune in plasters, creams and neck braces. The boys were just so ungraceful they could cause themselves harm in the most obscure of places. Sometimes it could be passed off with a laugh and a sigh and the promise of a large ice cream cone. But then there were times that it felt like the emergency room was a second home. It got to the point where their parents would risk assess every moment of every day. It caused lots of grey hairs and wrinkles, especially when the twins were at play. Just eating breakfast could be hazardous, with boisterous boys on the loose, elbows barging and poking, spilt hot porridge and jugs of sticky fruit juice. A family trip to the seaside was a nightmare just waiting to happen. Colton bashed Connor in the side of his head, and he fell from the surfboard he was sat on. A crab then nipped Colton on his little toe, which made him scream and hop around in great pain, and Connor collapsed with the giggles and fell backwards onto a dog named Dwayne. Both boys then got sand in their eyes, with Connor getting a mouthful to boot. Both parents looked sad and defeated, with shoulders that slumped and drooped. As the twins grew up, some lessons were learned and some grace entered both of their lives. But regularly there were events and accidents, with the twins taking some painful dives. Both boys were excellent sportsmen, with rugby being their favourite game, and when it was time for the scrum hold, they caused havoc again and again. Mr. and Mrs. Clumzie found some solace as the boys grew into men, especially when they left home for uni and the house became peaceful again. The twins both got into the film world and became stuntmen, perfecting their craft. Pain and bruising were so common to them both that it was a joyous job and never a graft. Except for one unfortunate day when both ended up in the hospital A&E, when their parachutes became tangled during a stunt jump from a plane, and they both ended up stuck in a tree. Cuts and bruises, broken arms and legs, this day was too painful to be ignored. But the best part about the accident were the 2 nurses that cared for them on the ward. Brooke and Bree Butz, the staff nurses, also twins, hovered and tended with care. And Connor and Brooke and Colton and Bree started romances then and there. Life went on for the Clumzie twins, and they married Brooke and Bree Butz within months and decided to look for safer work, something that did not include dangerous and painful stunts. So the day of the wedding, Brooke became Clumzie-Butz and Bree became Butz-Clumzie, with the order of names being their personal choice, leaving the vicar giggling as he changed into his onesie. A few years passed by, and Connor and Brooke had twin boys, Yura and Hyma, and although the grandparents were all very delighted, the name choices they thought were definitely joke primer. So when Colton and Bree had a little girl, who they named little Sheaza, both sets of grandparents shook their heads in despair and hoped that no one would tease her. All 3 children started school on the same day, and happily for them, they were all in the same class. Yura and Hyma sat together, and Sheaza sat with a new friend named Cass. When Miss Prissy was calling the class attendance register and she called out the name of Cass Clutch, she had to stifle a fit of the giggles, and to do so, she asked if she was Dutch. So Miss Prissy, now feeling under control, then read out Hyma Clumzie-Butz, Yura Clumzie-Butz, Sheaza Butz-Clumzie, and then had to excuse herself from the classroom for a while before she could read out the next names of Minnie and Magnolia Mumsy.